Welcome, everybody. Peter Afford is a counselor and psychotherapist, and he has a big interest in neuroscience. He's practiced and taught focusing for over 30 years and is author of Therapy in the Age of Neuroscience, which was recently published. And he's going to introduce us to the concept of focusing today. And it seems like a really good time for us to learn this practice of focusing. And it's reflective, and it brings mind back to its natural center in the felt experience of the body, very middle way. It restores emotional equilibrium, renews the spirit, and helps you find your way forward. So Peter's going to present. You can ask questions in the chat box, and he'll probably open it up for you to ask in person as well. And I will provide in the chat a URL near the end for a forum if you want to continue the discussion in the middle way, Society Forum. And you're being recorded, so please let me know in the chat if you object to being recorded, and we'll edit you out later. And I'm going to admit a couple more people. And we're also going to do breakout sessions. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Peter Afford. Thank you.
Okay. I presume everyone can hear me. I'm not muted. Okay. Yeah, nods. That's good. Okay. Thank you very much, Susan. And thank you, Robert, for inviting me to do this little workshop this evening on Zoom. And I was thinking there's good and bad points for me about this. The good is that this is a large crowd for focusing. Normally I teach focusing in very small groups, so it's nice to have a great big group. The downside of doing this on Zoom, as I've discovered from previous things I've done in recent weeks, is I don't get much of a sense of how my sense of humor goes down, and that can be a little disconcerting. So if I go on telling appalling jokes, please blame Zoom, not me, because if we were all in the same room, I would get it. So I'm in South London, Clapham. I'm the man on the Clapham omnibus, and you are wherever each of you are wherever you are. It sounds like it's a bit international, which is like focusing. Focusing is all over the world. I've been practicing focusing and teaching focusing for a long time, since sometime in the 1980s. And as Susan says, my bread and butter work is as a therapist in private practice here in Clapham. So I thought how we might start is by having a little quiet pause, which I might describe as a focusing moment. So instead of my just going on talking, let's just take a moment to look away from our screens and just have a quiet pause for half a minute and hear the quiet, assuming you have some quiet around you. Okay, thank you. So pausing to be quiet for a few moments is something we often do in groups in focusing groups, because it's so easy for us to talk, talk, and a quiet pause breaks that the talking up. And so what I'm going to do in this short workshop is I'll say a few things about focusing. We'll do a little experiential exercise, which is like a long pause. Then we'll see if Susan can make the technology work. You're going to breakout rooms with one other person and talk about what came up for you in that exercise. And then maybe hear back from one or two of you who might say a few more things. And we'll leave lots of time for question and answer session and a general discussion. So first of all, and I'm going to ask you a question, and this is partly because I'm interested to know the answer, but also to get a little bit more for me coming back from you, because this is a very it's very wonderful technological thing that we're doing, but it's also a bit strange, and we're not all in the same room. You don't feel the same kind of connection. If you already know something about focusing, you might have learned some focusing or done some focusing or read a bit about focusing. Can you sort of wave your hand at me? Oh, some of you have. Just keep waving, because I'm going to go to the second screen. That's lots of you. Okay, but not all of you. Thank you. Right, so this is fairly common. I find myself talking to a group where some people know something, maybe some people a lot, some people a little, and others are new to focusing. So that's fine. I'd also be interested if you attended Ian McGilchrist's talk this morning at 10 o'clock this morning. Can you wave your hand if you were there? Right, so quite a lot of you were there, not all of you. Thank you. Okay, I asked because, well, for a number of reasons. I was there, and Ian is one of my neuroscience gurus, and focusing is in a way a practice that helps our two hemispheres to work together if we wanted to think about things in neuroscience and nervous system terms. It's an excellent practice for turning from our busy, talkative left hemispheres to things processes that arise in the right hemisphere. So I might refer to some of Ian's ideas in this workshop. So focusing is a reflective practice. Other reflective practices are meditation, mindfulness, which we hear a lot these days. Focusing has some similarity with these things, but also some differences. And it's an active process in terms of consulting our feelings and our thoughts. And typically focusing is done in a partnership with a focuser and a listener. And so the focuser mixes being silent pauses to sense inside themselves with saying something from that's coming to them from inside. And then the listener listens and says it back. So there's often quite a lot of that kind of talking in a focusing session. There are other ways to practice focusing, but that's a very, very common one. So however we do focusing, whether we're on our own or with a focusing partner, taking turns, or maybe bringing some focusing into a group experience, what we do is we take our attention inside into the middle of the body, place where we can feel more in touch with our inner world of feelings and thoughts, images, and all the rich and wonderful stuff that comes to us inside. A point I like to make by way of introduction focusing is that there are really two kinds of focusing. And what I'm going to do is just try the Zoom whiteboard feature. So I'm going to share my screen, going to and go into the whiteboard. Hope you can all see this. Text. So there's focusing with a capital F, as this workshop has been billed. There's also focusing with a small f. And it rather helps to be aware of the two. Okay, I'm going to come back to main screen. Focusing started off by a man, a philosopher actually, called Eugene Gendlin, who noticed that sometimes some people were doing something by way of reflecting inside that he called focusing, and he called it, he wrote it with a small f, focusing. So that kind of focusing is a natural thing for people to do, like thinking, feeling, sensing, intuiting. He's added focusing into the mix and found that some people were doing it naturally and some people didn't seem to be doing it. There's a whole story about this, goes back into the 1950s, University of Chicago, and research into the effectiveness or ineffectiveness of psychotherapy sessions. So Gendlin started using this word focusing, and because it seemed to be valuable, first of all, to people who were going to have therapy, and then seemed to be have wider implications than just the psychotherapy room. I started teaching it, and when you start teaching something, you name it, and you have a system for teaching it, and you get a technique. Actually, focusing is a whole lot of techniques, really. You get an approach or a method, and that is focusing with the capital F, where we've named it and sort of spelled it out. You know, here is focusing, and here's how you do it. And so in a way, I'm going to be talking about both kinds of focusing today. And the attention tends to go to focusing with a capital F, the method. But the really valuable thing here is small f focusing, which is a natural thing that anyone can do, whether they've heard of focusing or not. And we live in a world where probably most people would benefit from doing a bit more of it than maybe they do. Okay. If those of you are into what Ian McGilchrist was going on about this morning and his book Master and Emissary, in Ian's terms, what we could say we're doing in focusing is we take the focused attention of the left hemisphere, that's using the word focus in a rather different way, focused attention to the open attention or the broad global attention of the right hemisphere. And when you do that, things happen inside for people. They get more in touch with their feelings, they start thinking different thoughts, images tend to arise naturally for them, sort of going into a different mode. And the practice of focusing, I think, is, as well as being a great thing to do, I've been doing it for 35 years or something, it's part of life. It provides an experiential way of understanding what Ian says about the differences between the hemispheres. Because if we just talk about the hemispheres, left and right hemispheres, and read about them will tend to understand them from a left hemisphere perspective. So focusing is a practice, and lots of other things will tend to do this as well, whereby we can get a sense of what really underlies the words that Ian has put on his exposition of the differences. Okay, at this point, that's just a few things, introductory things. Let's do my little experiential exercise. And for this, this will probably take us no more than 5 minutes. Okay, and you're going to do this on your own. I suggest you turn your attention away from your screen and gaze out the window, or at a picture in your room, or close your eyes if you would like to close your eyes. You can do focusing with your eyes closed. People often do, but you don't have to. Have them open if you like. And take a moment to hear the silence which comes in between the things I'm going to suggest to you, as you're already in your muted state, probably being quite silent. And become aware of your body. Good way to bring awareness into the body is to just notice your in-breath and how far down into your chest your in-breath goes, and where inside you breathe out from. Another way to connect the body is simply to feel your feet on the floor. And feel the support of the chair or sofa or whatever it is you're sitting on. So your body can just relax into whatever it is you're sitting on. And you could scan your attention through your body from your feet upwards and notice any areas that feel tense and other areas that maybe feel relaxed. So in focusing, there's no need to be super relaxed. This is just a question of noticing where in the body we become aware of holding some tension. So you bring your awareness up from your feet, through your legs, through your pelvic area, your stomach, diaphragm, chest, heart area. Feel your shoulders, your arms, your hands, your fingers. And let's include your head, starting with the neck and your head and your face muscles. You just notice how tense or relaxed you feel at the moment in your body. And I invite you to be aware of how you're feeling inside at the moment. Are you feeling generally good, something feel not very good? You might feel stimulated by the sessions at the festival this weekend. Maybe you feel starting to feel tired. You might be aware of a number of feelings at the same time. And the last thing in this exercise is to notice the main thing in your mind. What's you have a predominant thought maybe that you brought with you into this focusing workshop, or that's arisen while I've been talking, or just while you've had your eyes closed now. What's been on your mind? What is on your mind? Okay. So if you have your eyes closed, please gently open them again. Bring your attention back to your screen and the group on your screen. And I'm going to ask Susan at this point to press the magic button and put you in breakout rooms where you'll pair up with someone and just have a short minute or two either way. We hear back from one or maybe two people. We don't have much time, obviously. So Lenny, I was paired up with Lenny, and she was telling me about something that arose for her during this little exercise. So Lenny, would you be willing to, I floated a question your way, would you be willing to answer that in front with everyone present? Understand if you wish to do that.
Yes, no, that's fine. Thank you for checking. No, I didn't mean to catapult myself back out to the breakout room when I did.
So hold on, Lenny. Let me just explain for everyone. Lenny had told me how she'd had a very difficult experience during the week and had made a decision, an important personal decision. And just doing this exercise, a feeling of uncertainty and fear around that decision, was it the right decision, had arisen for her or came for her. And I asked her about her sense of that feeling of uncertainty and fear, and whether she feels the extent she feels she should trust that feeling or not. So do you want to say something about that, Lenny?
Yes, I mean, just to fill out a little bit more detail, I had an episode on Tuesday that led to me spending the day in A&E and being diagnosed with having had a TIA or mini stroke. And then on Friday, I had a phone consultation with the stroke consultant, and he wanted me to put me on medication straight away and for life. And I sort of worked through the different issues I have around that, and I decided that that wasn't the right thing for me to do for me at the moment. And I was feeling very happy about that and quite relieved. And then I was quite surprised when we did the focusing exercise just now to find I had a lot of what ifs, so all this uncertainty. But when Peter sort of cross-questioned me about that and asked me, how I felt, I actually felt like I could have cried, because I just connected with, it does feel right for me. And I think the what ifs are coming from me sort of contacting with other people who I think might doubt my decision or question me about it. And actually, for me, in myself, in my body, it feels like the right choice.
Okay, so you feel now that you have made the right choice on balance, and there's some emotion, very understandably, for you around this, because this is really big thing for you.
Yes.
Right.
And I feel like sometimes it's a thing with people in authority where, you know, they have particular ways of doing things and I don't fit in with it. I think that brings up a lot of fear.
Okay.
And so I think that's where the uncertainty is coming from.
Right. Okay, so thank you very much, Lenny, for that. And
Well,
I
thank
hope
you. That was really helpful. Really
All right.
helpful to get in touch with that. Thank you.
Okay, what you've said enables me to, is a good illustration of a point I'm just about to make, I want to make in this workshop. And so I'd really like to spend more time with you, but time is pressing. So I hope you're okay there. And I'd like to hear from other people, but there simply isn't time. So the point I'm going to make is I'm going back to share screen and the whiteboard. Right, so I've got a fresh whiteboard here. So this is what I'm going to write up. We have emotions, we have what we call feelings, and we have what we call in focusing the felt sense. And so I'm going to make a distinction between these three. Emotions are what arise in us and are generally visible to other people. When we get tearful, we get scared, we get angry, or we jump around with joy. Feelings are quieter than emotions, and we maybe have a choice whether to express our feelings or to hide our feelings, or withhold our feelings. Felt sense is different from both of those and is our sense of the whole of the situation that we may find we can't immediately put into words. And what Lenny demonstrated here was really a bit of all three. She reported feelings of uncertainty and fear. She became a little emotional, by the sounds of it, became tearful. And the purpose of my question was, how do you feel about, what I was really asking, how do you feel about these feelings that have just arisen for you, which is going into the felt sense of them. And that brought her back to the decision so it seems, to the decision she made a few days ago, and confirmed that that decision felt right for her. The felt sense is often what feels right for us and what doesn't feel right, and something else has got to find something else that does feel right. I'll stop share and come back to the main screen. So felt sense is the main concept that we work with in focusing. It's this subtle level of feeling that we tune into when we do reflective exercise like we've just done, or we may tune into it. If we're very emotional, then our emotions may take up most of the time. But the felt sense will always come sooner or later if we're patient. It's subtler than what we normally think of as emotion and feeling, more in the background, more like a little feeling or an intuition. Feels meaningful to us, but we may not have the words, especially in the first place, to express this meaningful feeling. And we sit with a sense that there's something more that wants to come inside us, something more maybe we want to say, something more we want to express of ourselves. And then if we're going to honor that, we sit with allow a process to happen of those finding what it is we do want to say, how we do want to express ourselves. And that may take a minute or an hour or a day, or it may take half a lifetime to really feel that we've given full expression to that felt sense of something that's important to us. So that's really at the core of focusing, whatever we do with focusing. And we do lots of things with focusing. First of all, it's a great way to take care of our emotional selves, our inner world of feelings and all that. It's very helpful to apply it to making decisions, to explore the felt sense of what feels right and what doesn't feel right for us. Creative thinking, to turn inside and to allow our own creative thinking processes, our own way of using language, our own way of thinking, of looking at something in the world, give expression to it. It's a great way of exploring dreams, if you're into that. And there have been many developments of focusing, for example, people taking it to groups of children, teenagers in schools, people doing whole body focusing, which is a kind of cross with the Alexander technique, where people stand up and it's less verbal and more movement and posture and gesture involved. This is a method that can be developed and has been developed in all kinds of ways, and has been, I think there are, the latest count, there's focusing going on in over 50 countries around the world. It's very cross-cultural, which is great fun when you get international meetings of focusers, and they find a way to communicate even though they don't speak the same language. Right, there's a lot more I could say, but I think the best thing to do is to pass the ball back to Susan to field questions or points that any of you would like to make and that I can respond to.
I was really, so I'm a little bit familiar with focusing. I've done it primarily, well, I've done it entirely on my own, just from reading Jenlin's book years ago, actually, and then rereading it recently, and then finding some very helpful focus. But I was very intrigued with you saying that you're familiar with Ian's work, and I'm presuming from that you have some views on how focusing, I'm guessing, integrates the hemispheres of the brain. But I'd love to just hear a little bit about your take on how his theories shed light on the focusing process.
Right. Well, if we start with what Ian says, I'll just reiterate the point I made before, that I think that what we do in focusing is we take our focused attention, which is normally directed outside to ourselves, like now it's directed to our screens, and we take it inside. And there are many practices and things that people have come up with over centuries to do this. Focusing is a specific way in which we take our attention into the body, particularly the middle of the body, and look around for this thing we call the felt sense, the sense of the whole of a situation, where we have more that we feel there's more there that we want to find a way of expressing, articulating, maybe putting words on. Now I'm getting into saying things, but just say your question again, Lucy.
Yes, I was just curious about.
Yeah, sorry, Ian. Right.
Yeah,
okay.
Because you had mentioned that that it could be seen as the left brain picking up the detail of our felt sense and the senses, but then I'm guessing there's a lot more going on, or I just want to sort of hear more depth around whether it's then the right brain that picks up some of the intuiting that's involved in the felt sense, and even whether there's an integration between. I'd just love to hear more about kind of.
Okay, so we take the left hemisphere focus attention and take it to the open broad attention of the right hemisphere, which includes the body. And Ian makes a distinction of these two forms of attention absolutely primary to the difference between the hemispheres. And I'm happy to go along with that. A big point I make is that the right hemisphere is more in touch with the body than is the left. The right hemisphere forms what I call an ensemble with the body, particularly the inside of the body. So that's organs, and the internal milieu is a neuroscience term for it. And so if we take our attention into the middle of the body to how we're feeling in there, it seems like we automatically go into a more right hemisphere oriented place. And that's where we can feel more in touch with our bodies again. And in there, because it's the right hemisphere with all the qualities that Ian describes, different processes kick off than happen if we stick around in our left hemisphere and try and figure everything out. And typically that means that fresh feelings arise, new thoughts may arise, images come very easily for people in focusing. And these are all processes that we would, with the sort of neuroscience that's in Ian's book, we associate with the right hemisphere. And then what happens, of course, is that the left hemisphere gets a hold of them too, and they work together, like in the process of finding adequate words to express what we're feeling inside. What we're feeling inside is a right hemisphere business, and the speaking and the words is more left hemisphere. We want to get the two to work together. And this active process of focusing is, I think, a way to do that.
Yes, that's me. I'm a narrative psychotherapist, and I work mostly in Africa. And narrative therapy works very much with post-structural ideas around away from the individual towards the collective. And I'm very interested in how focusing might work when you mentioned, say, 50 countries, how focusing might work in a collective sense. So I've worked with a lot of people with deep trauma, but groups, and how this felt sense might be resonant, say, in Zimbabwe or South Africa, where I've worked. Thank you.
Right. Well, what you have to do is go into that country and that culture with what you've learnt about this, and find a way to make it work. And of course, what you might find in some other countries and cultures is that people have a more natural and easy connection with their felt sense than some of us in the West, in more developed countries have. I mean, for example, there are some focusing people who've done work in, it kicked off in parts of Pakistan and Afghanistan, and they trained social workers in Afghanistan to go around really doing community trauma work with all the trouble there, and adapted focusing, enormous adaptation, which I think sort of involved getting people in village groups and getting them to listen to each other in a way that fitted well enough with their cultural norms, and that sort of simple process of working with the community, focusing can be adapted very well to that. There's a lot of material on this on the big websites, big focusing websites. If you're interested, find out more about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I found myself wanting to make this comment as I heard Lucy and you discussing the integration or movement between the hemispheres, using McGilchrist's concepts, with respect to focusing. And as I struggled to express my experience in the focusing exercise in our breakout group, a metaphor came to mind. And the metaphor was that of an ice cube sitting on a kitchen counter, which is crystalline and formed and has clear boundaries. This was my metaphor for the state of my consciousness as I began the exercise.
Yeah.
And the state of my consciousness at the end of the exercise was the melted ice cube with the water dispersed hither and yon, following the contours of the counter, and not being bounded by, you know, what I say metaphorically might be my conceptual view of the world. That's what I wanted to share.
All right. Thank you very much, Marcus. That's the sort of thing that happens when people do focusing. A little imaginative image process comes, and maybe it's, you know, it can be quite something quite mundane, like it's in your kitchen, and it probably comes with the quality of being that's not quite what you expected to happen. Would that be right?
It came to me unsolicited.
Unsolicited, yeah, we are. So there you see, we're talking about process. This happens in doing focusing with a capital F, but we all know that this happens for all of us sometimes anyway. So, and that's focusing with a small f. Something comes from inside that's unsolicited. Yeah.
We're getting close to the end. So I wanted to tell everyone that I've put a link in the chat if you would like to continue the discussion in the forum, the Middle Way Society forum. And for a final question, I'd like to ask you, Peter, about how this relates to the Middle Way philosophy from your point of view.
Right. Well, I'm going to throw the question back to you because I'm completely new to Middle Way. I hadn't heard of Middle Way until I was invited to do this workshop. And I've only read a very small amount on the website, and I listened to Robert yesterday morning. So I would like to hear from maybe from Robert or from yourself how you see what I'm saying about focusing the felt sense and the integration of the hemispheres relating to the Middle Way.
That's relatively new to me, though I have lots of experience in meditation. Yeah, the Middle Way, as I was talking about it on Saturday morning, is very much about avoiding absolutes in judgment. Really the avoiding absolutes in judgment is a way of getting closer to our experience and to put ourselves in states that enable us to recognize what's going on in our experience and benefit from it. So it seems like, along with mindfulness and meditation, a very helpful practice that one can use, particularly in the short term, to address any kind of absolute judgments that might be arising in us, to recognize that they're happening, for one thing, but also to get to a more grounded state where we can be aware of more options, more possibilities, so that we can be more provisional in the way we judge things. I mean, how would that sit with you, Peter, as a way of talking about things?
Yeah, that sits fine. I've got a few notes here I made, which I thought might be of interest here. The felt sense in groups, and maybe a lot Middle Way, you might be thinking about a group context, small group or large group. So the felt sense in groups is an interesting phenomenon. It's not quite the same thing as feelings in the group, though very closely related. So I would say that to encourage everyone to have access to their felt sense, to bring their felt sense into what goes on in the group. So let's see if this sounds Middle Way-ish. First of all, take your time, don't rush, because these processes take the time they take. Even if you don't have much time, don't rush. See that everyone in the group feels heard, because if somebody doesn't feel heard in a group, that is a problem for them and may become a problem for the group. take in what others are saying, even when you disagree with them, their point. So rather than react to each other, because it's so easy in groups for us to bounce off each other and react, take in and allow more reflective response to come. Allow feelings to be expressed in the group, but that doesn't mean that feelings have to, or a supposed group feeling has to dominate in the group. Aim for consensus where you can, as much as possible, though it's not always possible to have consensus, and allow for these very right hemisphere things that people have doubts, for there to be some disagreement, for uncertainty, like we don't know, not knowing, or we don't know yet, maybe tomorrow we will, but today we don't. Getting it wrong, it's okay to get it wrong, and being open-minded, which probably means being willing to change your mind on something. So do those sort of things sound middle way-ish? If you have a middle way group?
That sounds extremely middle way, which is probably is why you were invited to do this workshop at this festival. That was a very, very nice description and summary of focusing, and perfect timing, because we're 2 minutes away from 1 hour. So does anyone want to add anything? Say, I mean, I'd like to thank you very much for this session. It's been very interesting, and invite people while we're still here to copy the link that's in the chat if you want to continue the discussion in the forum. If you maybe in an hour or two, suddenly you'll think, oh, why didn't I ask this? And now you can, because you can go to the forum and type in the question. And hopefully, we can continue the discussion now that we've been introduced to focusing. So thank you, Peter, very much.
Thank you. Shall I just write up? I'm not going to be able to join the discussion. I've got to rush off, unfortunately. If I just share my screen again and write up an email address. So if anyone's got anything they want to tackle me on, let me just make text. I can't get in the right place. This email address will reach me, peter@focusing.co.uk. And
I'll put that in the chat as well. Okay. Well, I can't. Well, I'll retype it. Peter@focusing.
The main thing is that focusing has one S in it. Sometimes people put two, but that would be focusing, which is thing.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter.
And see you all later in the discussion. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Peter, and thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome. Thank you.